Welcome to the Holy Fire Fallen Flames series, where we delve deep into the profound and often unseen warfare between heaven and hell, a battle that rages within us, manifesting in our minds, bodies, and spirits. In this ongoing conflict, we are confronted with the forces of good and evil battling for our very souls. In Galatians 5 verse 17, we read, "For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh." This verse encapsulates the struggle that every believer faces, the desire to live according to God's will while grappling with the temptations and influences of the world. Heaven represents the ultimate home of peace, love, and righteousness, governed by our Creator. Here, angels and divine beings engage in worship and service, continually aligning with God's purposes. In contrast, hell embodies separation from God, where darkness reigns and the enemy schemes to steal, kill, and destroy. John 10 verse 10. The battlefield is not only external but also internal, as we wrestle with our thoughts, desires, and choices. The enemy seeks to exploit our weaknesses, targeting our minds with doubt, fear, and confusion. As Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 10 verses 4-5, "For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds." We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. This series will explore the strategies employed by both sides of this cosmic war, the temptations of the enemy, and the divine power available to us through Christ. We will examine how the battles within our minds, bodies, and spirits shape our lives and our relationships with God and others. We will uncover practical tools to engage in spiritual warfare, prayer, worship, and the truth of God's Word as we strive to align ourselves with heaven's agenda. Through powerful testimonies, we will hear how individuals have faced their own battles, discovering strength and victory through faith in Christ. Are you ready to confront the battles within and around you? Together, we will stand firm in our faith, igniting the holy fire within us to overcome the darkness and shine the light of Christ in a world desperately in need of hope. Welcome to the Holy Fire Fallen Flames series, where we ignite our spirits, reclaim our minds, and fortify our bodies in the name of Jesus as we engage in this spiritual warfare against the forces of evil.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Create Dominion podcast with your host, Dominion, and welcome to the brand new Holy Fire Fallen Flame Spiritual Warfare series. So excited to bring this new and intriguing series to the wonderful audience of the Create Dominion. And so throughout this series, we're going to highlight the spiritual battle and the spiritual warfare of good and evil, heaven and hell, and all things intertwined. So we're going to go through the really deep-rooted trials and tribulations of what men and women face today throughout the spiritual battles and to fight the good fight. And so we're honored and privileged to have Mr. Reginald Sherman, Minister Reginald Sherman, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. How you doing, Reginald?
I'm doing great, Dominion. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you for coming. Again, it's a pleasure to have you on the inaugural episode of the Holy Fire Fallen Flame series. And so with that being said, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, my name is Reginald Sherman. I grew up in a little town called Greenville, South Carolina. Came from a very, very religious family, a big family, actually. Had a generation of pastors and preachers and things like that. Now, I think one of the biggest things about my childhood growing up was that my mom was the only one that had kids out of wedlock. And coming from a religious family, one of my biggest challenges was that I was told by some of my family members that I'd never amount to anything because I was born out of wedlock. Now, keep in mind that not only I was born out of wedlock, they were speaking that over my life. My father wasn't in my life either. So I had those struggles and those things I had to struggle with on a daily basis. Coming up, we were poor, didn't have any money. My mom worked 3 jobs, played for 7 choirs in the church, and went to college. We still couldn't make ends meet. So it was tough. You didn't get all the good stuff the other kids had. Your neighbors and things like that. And then it opened up doors for people to, bully you in school because you don't have the best of everything. And you know how kids do, or some kids anyway. So I had to deal with that too. I had to deal with that and had to keep a level head on those situations because as things kept happening and it was compiling on you, man, and you're young, you're just like, man, I should be going through this as a kid. But nevertheless, that was my journey. And then it was my journey. So guess what? It was about fight. So I ended up, trying to do the best I can, best I could with what we had. I remember one time that my mom came home from work and she cooked dinner for me and my sister. Well, she fixed our plate and didn't fix her plate. And I asked her, well, Mom, you're not going to eat? And she was like, no, I'm good. I had a big lunch, which I knew that was a lie. We just didn't have enough food. So, she went to bed hungry, and things like that. And it happened more than one time, and so that was kind of hard on me being, actually the younger man of the house, because I was only male, had my little sister, then my mom. It was hard to see her go through that. But I ended up, my grandfather was my mentor. He was a pastor. He was a business owner. He had his own convenience store, had his own church. And I think, but one thing that's that bright side of my life. Like I say, people go through stuff, Dominion, but I'm telling you, there's a bright side of everything. If you just got to find it, So even though the family members treated me like they did, and you would think or wish more from them than anything, they wouldn't give me the hand-me-downs of their kids and things like that. They'd rather just go do something else with it. I remember one time we was in the yard and at a barbecue at my grandparents' house, and everybody piled up in the car like, hey, we're going to the mall and we'll be right back. So all my cousins piled up in these station wagons and all these cars. So I figured, hey, I can just roll with them. So I headed towards the car, and one of my aunts said, where do you think you're going? And I said, I just want to go with y'all. She said, no, you're not going with us. And they left me out in the yard, man, by myself, just standing there. But my grandfather, my hero, he kind of stepped up and he was like, told my mom, reached up in his pocket, gave her some money and said, hey, take him to the mall and get anything you want. So I went to the mall, and it's kind of weird passing your cousins in the mall. You got all these bags in your hand, things like that. I have to say that he was a very, very vital part of my life. Now, the fact of the matter, we're still poor. We're still trying to figure it out. It was still tough. I remember one time I was overseeing my mom, not eating sometimes and things like that. And we went to Burger King like every 6 months. It's like a treat on Friday night. We really didn't have no money. But she would make sure about every 6 months she'd take us to Burger King. So I go into Burger King. I'm 13 years old. And I saw that the manager kind of had the hots for my mom, right? So I looked at him. I said, hey, man, I need a job. And my mom was like, you can't work. You too young to work. You got school. You got this and that. And the manager said, well, he can work if you sign a waiver. So mom was like against it. But I called out of the line and I said, look, Mom, I said, I've seen you go to bed hungry. I said, and I'm done, I'm done with it. I said, please sign this waiver so I can help in the house. I don't never want you to go hungry again at night. So she did. And, made that one promise like they always do. Make sure those grades don't fail, So I did that, man, and really just live life as it came to me. We didn't have the best of everything and things like that, but I think, I took the momentum that my grandfather gave me, the guidance that he gave me, because I would go stay with him in the summertime when I was out of school. And he would just mentor me, man, taught me hard work, taught me how to run the store, a little bit about business and all that stuff, man. And I think that was one of the things that really, really changed my life and kept my head above water. Because even when I got to high school, I'm working 3 jobs, man, and going to high school, trying to help pay bills and things like that. So it was challenging. It was challenging. At the end of the day, when people tell you and doubt you and tell you never amount to anything and stuff like that, you can take it either one or two ways. You can either believe it or you can rise above. And I chose to rise above. I chose to not make them right, when it's all said and done. But then again, I chose how to handle my moments. And that's what, I always tell people. Everybody's going to have moments in life, good or bad. It's what you make of that moment is what's going to move you forward. So, later on in life, I had some struggles and things like that. Got laid off jobs, trying to go to work. And I'm grown now, by that time up there, I guess I was in my 20s, or maybe 30. But, sitting at home, had my own place, next time I know I ain't got no money, man. All I had was a carton of eggs in the refrigerator, man. I hit rock bottom. And then I became suicidal. And I had suicidal thoughts. Because at this point, I was burnt out with life, man. Because all my life I had to, it was different. You was in a fight, it seemed like. And I remember one time that I had the date and the time set when I was going to commit suicide. And I got up off the couch. I was on the couch, I remember, like yesterday. I got off the couch and I went to the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and it's like a voice spoke to me. And it was God telling me, say, you can't do this to yourself. There is a certain amount of people I got assigned for you, assigned to you. What are they going to do if you kill yourself? And man, next thing I know, Dominion, I went into a deep sleep, man. It was like, I ain't slept in days, man, because I was just so depressed and things like that. And when I woke up, man, I felt so free and so light, and it was crazy, man. It's like God just took over, And then next thing I know, I was started having these dreams, and this is what got me in the ministry. I started having these dreams of me speaking and waking me up at 3:00 in the morning. So in the dream was this church. I saw a church. Then I saw people outside of the church in this field, a whole bunch of people. I dreamed it 3 nights straight, and it woke me up at 3:00 in the morning, all 3 nights. So I knew it was God speaking to me. So I got up, got on my knees, and said, all right, God, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do your will. And after that, went and talked to my grandfather about it. Then my grandfather had just built another church, but he was just the overseer. But my cousin was the acting pastor. I talked to my grandfather about it, and he said, okay. And he said, before I let you go down there to the big church, he said, we're going to start having service in my living room on Friday nights. And he said, I'm going to build you a podium, and I'm going to let you get started right here first before I, cut you loose in front of all the people down there. So that's what he did. So every Friday night I was speaking and I was doing all the stuff at his house in his living room. And then finally he called my cousin like, hey man, he ready. And then after that, cousin, he licensed me, and then I preached my initial sermon, I think back in 2004. And that's how it all started in the ministry side.
I love everything that you shared. Again, thank you for, sharing on just a small bit of your testimony. And what I want to ask is, again, if you guys are listening and viewing, you get to choose your heart, right? You get to choose, we always say you can only control actions and attitude, and you get to choose, how you react to certain situations. And that, again, like you said, builds your character. And so going back to the beginning, what was your mindset? Like, because I know people are listening and viewing and like, wow, your aunt said you couldn't, go to the mall with the rest of your cousins. As a kid, what was your mindset like? Because, again, like we said earlier, some kids are bullies. They always say, some kids are mean, which is true. We've seen it, throughout time, whether it's cyberbullying, whether it's picking on you for your clothes, or even if it's physical, taking lunch money, things of that nature. What was your mindset like, as a child, having to go through that? And, how did you allow that to allow you to persevere?
Well, I think one thing about it, I think God had his hands on me at that time in my life too. I just didn't know it. He ordered my steps on a lot of things. And because I see kids go through things like this now, and they ended up in trouble, or end up in gangs, and end up in all this different stuff that shouldn't be in, just because of neglect, and just because they feel like they have to be, a part of something. But I think with me, really believe God had his hands on me, and I'll be honest with you, I was at a place in my life, man. I was like, man, you know, I got to make the right choices. We already down. I can't mess it up, make it even worse. So I had to, and the biggest thing is that I accepted my moment, man. I accepted. I never was like a poor me kid. I was like, all right, this is the way it is, man. This is the way it is. That was it hard, and it was mentally hard. It was mentally hard. That's why I surrounded myself around my grandfather, because he gave me peace. He gave me a safe place. And things like, that's the way I felt. And I would tell anybody that, you got to find your safe place when you're going through things like this, but you got to make sure that you don't do something detrimental to make the situation worse. Because, the enemy, he come to kill, steal, and destroy. We know that. And, once you make that one decision, sometimes you can't never take it back, and it can cost you your life. Not physically, but it can cost you incarceration for the rest of your life or whatever, just because you made that one split decision. I think only one thing that I actually would regret, kind of, sort of, I can say, is that on the bullying aspect of it, my mom had went and bought some shoes, man, and we didn't have no name brand shoes. I think the shoes cost like 15, sneakers cost like 15. I went to school one day, and this kid just came up to me, man, and he stepped on my shoes, brand new sneakers, man, scuffed them up, spit in my face, called me poor, all this stuff. And I don't know if I handled it right, but at the end of the day, I dealt with it. Okay. And it wasn't because he spit in my face. It was because his he scuffed up these shoes that my mom worked so hard to buy. You know what I'm saying? I see how tough it is. You're gonna think you're just gonna do this. But, at the end of the day, me and the kid, man, we became best friends and things like that. But like I say, when you get in these moments and things like that, you got to understand that it's your moment. I mean, sometimes you can't change it overnight. So if you can't change it, you're gonna have to deal with it the best you can until you get through it.
Amen, amen. I love everything you said there. And you said something, I hope you guys were listening. You said something about the one mistake or one decision that could cost you your life, and not just physically. And I kind of want to break that down, because again, for those of you that are Christian and read the Bible, it talks about, multiple forms of death. Death isn't just the physical body. And so I kind of want you to walk through that on that standpoint of, how our decisions can, lead to not just, physically dying, the funeral and all that stuff, but also, the torment throughout, you know, human life as well.
Yeah, so I'll put it simple to you. The Bible said the wages of sin is death, right? And like you said, that means spiritual death. I mean physical death. I'm sorry, physical death. I mean, it means all it is a price you're gonna have to pay for making a mistake, and that price can be heavy. And that price can cost you more than you want, and it can cost you your life. Because you look at it, if you go out here and do something, a crime or anything crazy, and they say, "Hey, man, you 20 years old," and they say you got 50 years in prison. That's your life, man. You ain't getting out till you 70. Then what you gonna do? Who's gonna hire a 70-year-old person? Or are you gonna have any momentum to go back and go to college and do all this stuff at 70 years old? It'll set you back. And that's what I want everybody to know, is that the price you have to pay is the most critical thing. When you make a decision, you always count the cost, no matter what you do in life. If I make a decision, and it doesn't even have to be a bad decision. It could be a decision in business or anything or trying to do something. And are you willing to pay the cost? And most people are not. Especially when you look at it and be like, man, am I really want to pay this cost of being locked up for 50 years if I just get mad at this guy and shoot him or rob the bank or whatever the case may be? I mean, do you really want that cost? No, you don't want it, but you got to think about it. And that's the problem. People don't think about the cost. They don't think about the price they got to pay. They just do it. And then think about that later, but it's too late then. And then it messes up your spiritual life too. God has so much for you. He has so much purpose inside of you, so much you want to do with you. And at the end of the day, he can't do it if you're making bad decisions. You're just setting the whole process back. And, you're better than those things. And that's why it's always, that's why I always tell people, make sure in the moment you make the right decision.
I love the way you broke that down very simply because actually I was listening to a sermon a few months ago and he was saying you can't accept the role without the responsibility. And it's not
Exactly.
just, like you said, in business or, at your job, it's whatever decision you make, whatever role you're stepping into for that decision. If you can't, you have to also accept the responsibility that comes with making that choice. And you have to be willing to, again, live with that and be convicted in that decision. And like you said, if a lot of us, we just react out of emotion and we don't really sit down and think like, well, like the prison thing, well, if I shoot and kill somebody and I got to spend 50 life, what, especially if you have kids, what are my kids going to do? What am I going to do? Like you said, nobody's really just think about, and that's just if you're blessed enough to make it to 70, and so just think about that, as you're listening and viewing to this episode, just think of if you're under the age of 50, that's your whole life. So just think about that. If you're 50 or under, everything you've done in your life to this point would just be taken away, just be wiped out. And so, especially for the younger generation, a lot of us, we always say you have your whole life ahead of you. Well, if subtract that by 50, a lot of you in the negative. So think about it, you're not even born yet. So literally everything you've ever done, every decision, let's say if you're 20 years old, that's another 30 years on top of that. So it's like literally living your life 2.5 times just to get to the actual prison sentence. And that's not including actual living. And so I hope, everyone kind of takes that to heart and really ingrains that in their mind of really thinking about, some of the decisions you make throughout your life. Again, it can happen to anyone. We all have family members, friends, cousins, classmates in school. We look on the news, turn the channel. They literally have TV stations dedicated, for those kind of stories of. And then what saddened me the most about it is, you'll see you'll look at the face on the news and you'll be like, hey, I went to high school with them, or, they were a 4.0 student, when we went to school, or, they were the captain of the football team or cheerleading squad, or man, she was the best in math. She used to help me with my math homework. We see somebody that, done, lost their mind and committed a heinous crime. And you're like, now they're again spending the whole rest of their life, behind bars or wherever. And, those are the things you have to, look at when you make your decisions. And so I definitely appreciate you, breaking that down. And again, and another thing we used to always say is, don't pay the cost if you can't be the boss, right? And so just make sure that you're weighing your costs on while you're making your decisions. And so going back to your story, you're going through your earlier parts of the ministry, but before that, can you walk us through, because a lot of mental health and things of that nature kind of starting to get more light, which I love. That's the main purpose of, podcasting, to reach out and help people. And so with that being said, can you walk us through your mindset of kind of how you, manage that depression and then again, what you felt, once you had that dream and kind of decided to let God order your steps.
Well, when I was going through the depression state and things like that, I think that I don't know if I did manage it. I knew I was there, but I didn't go see anybody, which I recommend, now looking back over to anybody going through some type of depression or anything, man, please speak up, go tell somebody, that day I was a single man. I was just living life, man. And I was just living a depressed life and, things like that. And I just thank God that he spoke to me before I actually did the suicidal thing. So that's probably the biggest thing. But I will say this, and I'll reiterate this: do not, if anybody is going through any type of depression, any kind of thing like that, because it's real, man. It's real. People are taking their lives left and right because of this. You need to go see somebody and talk to somebody before you just sit there and let it beat you up. But once God spoke to me and then I started having those dreams, man, I never shit and all that just went away. Cause now, and that's the way I feel. I went from being depressed to knowing I got purpose. And see, when I had those dreams, I said, man, it's an assignment for me. I see it. He showed it to me. So that became magnified and it overwhelmed the depression and all the anxiety and all the stuff I used to have, at that time, because now my purpose, is bigger than what my situation was. And it kind of overtook me. And then I started walking in it. And, man, it's something about walking in your purpose. It gives you, especially with me, growing up, being told I was going to mount anything, stuff like that. When I started walking in my purpose, God got me on that path. It like validated me, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like you go play football all your life, go to, Pee Wee football. Then you go to play junior varsity, and you go high school and play football and all this kind of stuff. Then you end up at college, then you end up in the NFL getting drafted. It's nothing like when you hit the NFL. You like the college, you like when you played in high school, but when you hit the NFL, you hit that field, it's like you validated now that I am a football player. This is who I am. This is my purpose at the end of the day. And that's what it did to me when God called me. It validated, wiped out everything everybody else was saying about me or has said about me. I knew then that I was here on assignment and nothing else. Started seeing everything I went through in my life without a father, all the hard times, all that. I started seeing all of that. I said, all of that happened for me to get to where I am right now.
Well, I love that you said that because, again, you said one word and that was purpose. Again, and I think especially with the youth, we lack the pursuit of purpose. And I just want to encourage everyone listening and viewing here today that, you have a God-given purpose. Everybody has an assignment. And I encourage everyone to focus on your assignment, but also, again, like you said, seek higher counsel. If you're going through something, speak up. We used to always say closed mouths can't get fed. And so, again, seek that higher counsel. For Reginald, it was his granddad. Everybody, God will put people in your life, to help you get through certain obstacles to get to the next level. But the key is we have to listen and make those good decisions to actually listen to what God's doing and what God's saying to allow that to happen. And so I just encourage everyone to, try to work on finding your purpose. And again, it's not going to be overnight. Like Reginald said, his story, it was hard. He never said, it was, peach cobbler and ice cream and just, skating by. He didn't say, he grew up, wealthy with, all the fancy stuff, but he had purpose. And so when you walk in purpose, I always say dive into the deepest part of the mind to reveal the true light that shines. once you know your purpose and you know your assignment and you focus and are convicted in that assignment, the light shines, and darkness is nothing but a drawing. It's just the absence of light. And so once you find that light, which is that purpose, and you're convicted in it, then all the depression, anxiety, spirit of rejection, lust, all that stuff, again, it gets banished because it's negated by the light. And so I just encourage everyone listening to find your light, find your purpose. And again, don't accept that role without the responsibility of everything to come with that purpose, because everybody has a different purpose. That's why they say don't follow idolatry, because, you might be looking at TV, you might be seeing your favorite singer or somebody on TV, and you might be like, wow, they have a great voice and that's their purpose. That might not be your purpose to sing in front of millions. So don't idolatrize, don't get, envious of others' success, because, everybody has a different assignment.
Exactly. Exactly. And then one thing about purpose, you got to understand also, when you have purpose in life, there's going to come a time when you're going to question it, if you should be doing it or not. Because what happened with me in ministry, I was told by, because I grew up in a generation of pastors and preachers. Everybody was like, man, you're going to be a pastor. You're going to pastor a church. You're going to do this. And, and I guess everybody kind of think the pastor is the ultimate call, but it's really not. The ultimate call is what God actually called you to do. So I went to a couple of churches that called me to speak. And I went there and I spoke, and the board called me the next day, was like, hey, man, we're looking for a pastor. We really like you speaking. Would you be our pastor? And I said, well, yeah, I consider it. Then they called me back, and it was like, hey, we got one question. Are you married? I was like, no, I'm not married. They said, well, you can't be our pastor. And that happened to me on another occasion. Somebody asked me to come pastor their church. And the reason they didn't let me pastor their church is because I wasn't married. Now, here I am talking to God, like, God, hey, do I really need to be doing this? Is this what you want me to do? Because I'm getting turned down like left and right, So I'm questioning my purpose at that point. And but what God does is, when you stay in it, and don't quit. So a lot of people get disappointed when going through their purpose. Instead of letting it play out, they just quit and start doing something totally different that God doesn't have for you. You have to let your purpose play out when you get challenges while doing your purpose. Because as long as you in your purpose, man, everything clicking, you ain't thinking about none of that. But as soon as something comes and upsets it, then you start questioning it. But at the beginning what God said and what God called you to do. You got to take yourself back to the beginning. So I was questioning, hey, should I be out here speaking and speaking in all these churches? Because, man, they asked me to be a pastor, then I'm getting turned down everywhere. It's like crazy. And then I got a phone call from this particular church. It was like 2 hours away from my house, out of the country somewhere. And I went and spoke, and that pastor called me at like 9 o'clock that night on Sunday night. And he said, hey, that my congregation received you so well. He said, I wouldn't step down and give you my church. Just like that. So that was God showing me, say, hey, man, you are good enough. Those churches are just not for you, at the end of the day. So when you're dealing with your purpose, you got to understand that some things you get turned down because it's not for you. Everybody will come after you for this and that, the other, but God will put a roadblock up, but you can't look at it as if, I don't supposed to be doing this, or start questioning yourself just because you hit a roadblock and it's because you got turned down on something. It's not that you got turned down. God just didn't allow it to happen.
Well, I love that you broke it down like that, because again, whether it's job promotions, I know that's one of the biggest ones, promotions or getting a job for younger people, the college, getting, accepted to a college or university, pay raise, just different things like, whether relationships. A lot of times we, think that we're not good enough because we get rejected. But again, like you said, it's not that we're rejected, it's that it's not for us. And so I like to use, I'm a cook, so I like to use food. It's like, hey, you really want the steak dinner. And so you compromise and you say, hey, I'm just going to get the little $10 special. But then it make your stomach hurt. And you're like, oh, I should have just got the ribeye. It's the same thing. It's God saying, hey, you don't need this. You're worthy of more than the $10 special. And so I just want everybody to know that just because, like you said, just because you get rejected or just because you think you're getting rejected, don't beat yourself down. Show yourself grace and understand that, hey, there's something bigger in store and something greater that can match what you thought you got turned down tenfold. It could be buying a house. You might have got rejected for the 3-bedroom, but God gave you a 5-bedroom with a pool in the backyard. And so you just have to be consistent in your conviction and be willing to walk it out. I think that's the main thing, is be willing to walk it out. And back to the beginning of your testimony, what you said was about understanding, that you get to choose how you react to a certain situation and decision, and that also deters people as well, because when you get rejected, do you throw a hissy fit? Do you throw a pity party? Do you just say forget it and throw your hands up and just walk away and quit? Or do you say, you know what, I'll get the one that God has for me? And so you just have to, again, align with your purpose. And then on that alignment, everything is, Mom always used to say, everything that look good ain't good for you. And so just because, you get a degree and you think that job's going to be a good job and you don't get that job, that doesn't mean that doesn't nullify your intelligence or your degree. It's just that job wasn't what God had planned for you. And so I just encourage everybody to continue to stay uplifted and stay, confident in your purpose. And it's going to get hard. We're not saying that it's easy, but again, if you have that in your mind that you're going to keep persevering, then you will eventually have, the abundance that God has in store for you. And so with that being said, I kind of walk us through, what was your mindset of where you kept going through those rejections in ministry. And, once you kind of got to a good place in ministry, how did that allow you to persevere and become the minister you are today?
Well, when that last pastor called me and said he was willing to step down and give me his church, by that time I didn't have any passion of trying to pastor anybody's church. After all the rigmarole, getting turned down and all that, I was like, now I'm just gonna go back and be at my home church, and started doing what I feel good doing in my spirit, and that's doing outreach ministry, street ministry. So I started doing that and things like that, and I would go speak in different, you know, men's conferences, and Salvation Army had me on the hook one time of speaking there. But I would, but at the end of the day, man, I had an outreach team, and we used to go out and do all kind of stuff in the community and things like that. But the crazy part about it, I felt like that God had me on something different. He was turning me on to something different. I always felt it. So you fast forward, and I married my wife in 2020, and keep in mind I had this dream back in 2004 or something like that about the church and the people outside of the church. So we were coming back from church, and I actually told her about this dream that I had years ago, and that's how I ended up in the ministry and blah 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 blah. So we was coming back from church, and she said, "Hey, stand up against the wall and let me take your picture." When we came in the house, right? And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, but okay. So I did it, and she said, "You're gonna start a podcast." And back then, man, I heard of them, but I really didn't know, the ins and outs of it. And she manages everything I do. So we started this podcast, back in 2022, man, and it has taken off, man. I mean, like crazy. It's like in the top 1% of podcasts. It's in Apple Podcasts in the top 200 shows in like 95 countries up to date. And the crazy part about it, it hit me when I saw all these countries, man. Some of these countries I didn't even know existed. And then you get feedback on your website of how people saying, "Hey, man, you changed my life. You did this and you did that." So it was crazy. But God spoke to me. He said years ago. He said, "I showed you that church for a reason." He said, "Not for you to be in the church. I mean, pastoring the church." He said, "I showed you the people out there that field also. That multitude of people that was outside of that church in that field years ago. I showed you. That's those people you're reaching right now." So that came full circle back to me. I was like, man, if I would have went and tried to pastor a church, I'd have been offbeat, man, what God had for my life. You know what I'm saying? So, and now, man, it's just, I mean, it's been very amazing what he has done with it, how he's blessing people, through me in other countries and things like that. He just fulfilling that one dream that he showed me years ago.
I love the way you said that because going back real quick, what I want to say to the audience is don't force it, right? Again, you could have forced the ministry and been, stubborn and just said, no, I'm gonna be a pastor of a church and I'm not gonna rest until I'm a pastor of the church. Don't try to force God's hand. Don't try to play God. That's what I'll say. I always encourage people. A lot of us try to do that with, and for you to listen, and you may not resonate with ministry, but it could be, at your job. Don't stay at the same job and try to force your way to a promotion. Like, I'm gonna get the manager job. I'm gonna be the big boss, and I don't care who I gotta, step over to get. That's not the way to go about life. Again, because that's not your purpose. And then when it's time for you to get a position of that stature, then God will give it to you when he feels you're ready and when you can accept that purpose. But again, the caveat side of that as well is don't try to accept the role without the responsibility. And a lot of times, especially with social media nowadays, we just look at the glitter that ain't gold. And we just think that everybody that posts something has it all together, has the best life. And, 9 times out of 10, that's not the reality. Um, so social media is a fantasy, that, a lot of people play out. And so take everything with a grain of salt. Just because you see the big house, the nice car, and the great outfit, that doesn't mean that person's just, arrived. And again, that might not be your purpose. That might not be your calling to have, a Lamborghini and a 10-car garage house. Try not to focus on materialistic things. Try to focus on what's inside of you. Because again, it all ends and begins inside of us. And so with that being said, also, I know people that are listening that, a lot of people resonate with ministry. Some people don't. Um, as a minister, what can you entail on just the spiritual battles and what it takes to maintain God's role in your life while, still going through, the different trials and tribulations that humans face on a day-to-day basis?
As a minister, you got to understand, it depends on what type of ministry you're doing, actually. Now, if you're a pastor with a huge congregation, then you got responsibility to all those people, things like that, and you carry that burden of the people. But the thing about it is, the not only ministry, but just say, for instance, in the workplace. So I always say, much is given, much is required. See, people want the status. They want, status of, I'm going to be a pastor of this huge congregation, or I'm going to be, the boss of this company, and I'm going to run this company, I'm going to do this and that. You got to understand, it comes with burdens, man. Your burden level goes up, like, because now you got more responsibility. And if you got any passion, for people. You know, you're going to carry their situations or some of the things that they're going through. You're going to carry it if you care. So I always tell people, be mindful of what you ask for, because, you know, you if you want to get up to this level and you want to lead all these people, I mean, I'm over 100 people that right now my team. And I got to carry you, man. And I'm telling you, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it all falls on me. You know, so you have to be mindful of things like that when you asking for these responsibilities, because these responsibilities, it comes with grind, man. It comes with grind. It comes with sacrifice. And I think sacrifice is probably the toughest thing, the biggest thing that will wear you out is the sacrifice you have to make. You know, sometimes you have to set your own self aside just to make sure the whole is okay. You know, you be going through things yourself, man. You got to get in your prayer closet and just be like, all right, God, it's just me and you, man. I'm I ain't got nobody to talk to today. Everybody talking to me, about this stuff. So you got to understand that, it comes with a big sacrifice and a burden that you have to be willing to carry. And that's in ministry or that's in leadership, period. One thing I have a pet peeve of is a slothful leader, no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're pastoring the church or been a minister or if you're running the company. If you can't lead people and you can't make people great and you can't bring the best out of people, you shouldn't be doing it. That's just the way it is. If you just lead and you got this position because you like that paycheck, but you don't want to make a difference to nobody life, all you care about getting your pockets fat and don't want to bring nobody else up behind you, then you're missing the whole thing. So with that being said, being in ministry, and a lot of times people may not want to say ministry. A lot of times your ministry is all over the place. Your ministry is at your job. Sometimes, you got people connected to you, it's at your job also. The way you handle these people spend all 12, 13 hours with you a day or whatever hours y'all work, they trust you, man. They want, they want you to, treat them right. And then when they open up to you, they want you to be honest with them. They respect you, as a leader, if you worth being respected. I mean, if you're doing things. So that's, like I say, it's more than just being in the church. It's everywhere you go.
Awesome. Also, I love that you said that because it goes right back to what we've been saying all episode. You can't accept the role without the responsibility. And again, as a leader, you have to walk in your purpose as well. And I love what you said that because a lot of people, truly don't know what leadership is. It's not just the paycheck or the title or the little block that's on your desk like when you were in the classroom with the teacher, right? It's not about having the big boss office. It's about, how are you cultivating your future leaders? Everyone has a role, whether it's the housekeeping staff, the guy that takes the trash out, or whether it's the CEO of the company, everybody in between, we're all owners of the business in some sort of fashion. And so how you treat your people as a leader and how you motivate them to achieve not just what they're doing on the job, but to live a better life outside of work, the better people. As leadership, you're in the business of building people, not just a paycheck. So I encourage everyone, if you are a leader and it's aspiring to be a leader or a minister, you have to take that up with, I would honestly take that up with God first to allow him to order the steps to gain that. Because again, leadership is a journey every day. We're always learning, even as leaders, we still learn on a daily basis. Again, just because you're a leader doesn't mean you're perfect. And I think people kind of say, again, going back to the social media, again, people see like, well, he's a CEO of the company or, oh, he's a pastor of a mega church, but that doesn't mean that, they're perfect. And so always show yourself grace and allow God to work on you and allow you to align with your purpose. And so with that being said, what are some last minute tips and motivation you would give the audience? And can you also tell them where they could find your podcast?
Okay, Dominion. One thing I would say is that no matter what you're going through in life, no matter what situations you're in right now, is that God is still there with you. He's there with you. You may not feel like it because you're looking all around and seeing what's going on around you. But at the end of the day, you need to look up. Or if you keep your head up and keep looking up, eventually things will change. And you have to stay positive even when you want to feel negative. You got to stay positive because positive energy bursts, great results at the end of the day. And you got to keep being positive and keep telling yourself, I'm going to get through this. But here's the thing. You can't be slothful. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the grind, whatever it takes to get you out of the situation that you're in. You have to handle every moment the best you can. If you handle your moments right, I guarantee you'll walk out of any situation that you're going through right now. But you got to have faith, not only in God, but you got to have faith in yourself that you can do it. You can't sit here and just wait for God just to say, just yank you out of it. Now, he does do miracles, but sometimes he's like, hey, I'm giving you the tools. I'm giving the powers within you. So you need to make some choices. You need to make some better decisions to get what you want in life. And when you see what you want in life and when you know your purpose, don't turn back. Keep going. You got to get there. I remember a message that was preached. I don't heard so many sermons, man, but it's like only two in my life that really just changed me. And I don't heard probably thousands of them from all my granddad, my uncles, my cousins, and all of that. But it was one said, I must see wrong. That was the title of it. And basically, my cousin was preaching this sermon. And he said that, when Paul was on his way to Rome, he had all these bad incidents. He was shipwrecked. He was bitten by a snake. He had all this stuff happen to him on his way to Rome. And he stopped and he told God, hey, this is too much. I ain't going to make it. I'm going to die here. And God responded to him and said, be of good courage. You must see wrong. So let me break it down to you like this. Everybody got a Rome in their life. Everybody got a Rome. Everybody got a Rome they got to get to. A purpose you got to get to. That's your Rome. So no matter what you're going through on the road to your Rome, you got to be of good courage. You got to keep going because you got to see your Rome. For the website, it's Real Talk with Reginald D. It's on social media. It's on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. It's available on all podcast networks. And you can just simply go to the website with realtalkwithreginald.com, pull it up, and you can listen to the podcast. You can book me for speaking engagements. I do motivational speaking and things like that. They're using God to kind of pull the train, but it's kind of a motivational style speaking. It's all on the website.
Awesome. And again, wonderful episode 1 to kick off the Holy Fire, Fallen Flame Spiritual Warfare series. Again, focus on your purpose. Allow God to align your steps. And like Reginald said, everybody has a Rome that they're trying to get to. Don't get lost on the journey. Maybe you can stop for water, but keep on going. And again, I encourage everyone to always decree the dominion of their own mind to reveal the true light that shines. This has been episode 1, and until next time on Holy Fire, Fallen Flame. Thank you.
As we conclude this powerful journey through the Holy Fire, Fallen Flame series, we invite you to carry the insights and revelations you've received into your daily life. Remember, spiritual warfare is not just a battle fought on the outside. It begins within us, in our hearts, minds, and spirits. Choosing to follow Christ is the most significant decision you can make. He is our source of strength, hope, and victory over the darkness. In Romans 8 verse 37, we are reminded, no, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. As we walk this path of faith, let us embrace our God-given dominion and authority. We are called to rise up, take our stand, and declare victory in every area of our lives. We encourage you to continue this journey with us by following the Decree of Dominion podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook. Join our community where we delve deeper into the truths of God's Word, share powerful testimonies, and equip ourselves for the battles we face. Together, we will stand firm in our faith, ignite the holy fire within us, and fulfill our divine purpose. Thank you for being part of this series. May you walk in the light, empowered by the Spirit, and continue to declare dominion over every area of your life. Remember, you are not alone in this fight. Follow Christ, embrace His promises, and let's continue this journey together. God bless you.